Back with Bobby and JJ Radio, we have Mr. Michael Cohen here. He's with a new company called Drones of Prey, not Birds of Prey, but Drones of Prey. I want to say thanks for hanging out with us today, Mike.
Of course, I appreciate you guys having me.
So I'm not a drone guy at all, but Bob kind of is. So I'll let Bob.
So tell us about the company.
Yeah, what is it? What's
Tell us all
going
about
on?
the company.
Sure. So, I mean, the main premise of the company is drones are being used for a lot of things that they shouldn't be used for. It's not just people flying around taking pretty pictures.
Mm-hmm.
You've got people who are smuggling drugs into prisons, carrying out corporate espionage missions with drones, and you actually have the exact same drone that you could have delivered to your house tomorrow being used to carry out attacks on soldiers in the Middle East. So the thing is, we don't have the ability today to reliably detect or mitigate any of these issues. So what we're building right now is a system that detects and tracks incoming drones for large-scale locations. So we're talking about stadiums, we're talking about prisons, we're talking about critical infrastructure sites, any kind of open-air venue where a drone could be used to have a negative effect. So we're building a system to essentially let people know what I'm calling it an aerial risk profile. So we're letting people know what their aerial risk profile is so they can properly respond to it.
And how do you, are you catching it by sound or by applications or how are you finding them?
Right, so I think that's actually like the most unique part about our company. You know, there's competition in the space. I'm not going to say we're the only people to have come up with the idea that you need to combat drones. We're focused on an audio-based solution. And the reason that we're using audio for detection, like the main thing people think for some reason when they hear about us is they think we have like our sensors attached to drones and we're flying around. We're not flying. We're detecting flyers. So we put stationary sensors around a facility.
Because the drones make a certain sound.
Exactly.
It's a certain buzz.
Exactly. That buzz is very, very unique. The only thing that we confuse or could potentially confuse a drone for that's in the air are insects. And because insects operate and fly so differently than a drone does, they're pretty easy to filter out. So we use audio for our detection. And the main reason we use audio is as drones have become more and more sophisticated with their technology, they can fly autonomously, they can fly off of just like line of sight of landmarks. So there's not necessarily an electronic signal being created by the drone to be detected. So a lot of our competition is focused on stuff like radio frequency detection. It's not necessarily a radio frequency for you to detect. And if you're going to be a security company, you really need to be as reliable as possible. So we focused on audio, so that way no matter how a drone is being flown, we have the ability to detect it.
So
how about in the future, are they going to get quiet and then you can detect them?
So they could potentially get quieter. I mean, DJI actually just upgraded their drones to have new propellers on them that are slightly quieter. You're never really going to get rid of that full buzz, so they're still operating at the same frequency. It's the same frequency, just a smaller amplitude, so the volume is less. But the longer our system exists and is training itself off of live data, the more sophisticated it becomes. So we'll be able to keep up with drones as they become quieter. And furthermore, like right now we're using $50 microphones for our detection. You know, if drones get to the point where we need a more sophisticated microphone to do our listening, we can always upgrade the hardware that we're using and still operate on the exact same software that we've built.
So what got you to create a business to stop these drones from being stealth?
Sure, I wish I was cool enough to say that like this was my idea and that.
You can blame it on me.
So it's actually my co-founder's idea. He's a former low altitude air defense officer with the Marines. So he's a Stinger missile guy. He was in Afghanistan 7 years ago, and he was dealing with drones as a threat in Afghanistan. So the story that I always used to tell was he's called into the general of his area of operations office, along with a fighter pilot, a helicopter pilot, and a radar operator. And these 4 air defense experts are told that Iran is flying a drone across the border into Afghanistan on a daily basis, and they need to figure out how to bring it down. And the best answer over 6 hours that they could come up with was helicopter gunfire. And not only is it a helicopter that you need to send up and shoot this thing down, you also need to send out a bunch of Marines on the ground to secure a 1 square mile perimeter as to where this thing's going to crash. So it's a huge danger to everybody.
So you're trying to catch it.
They're trying to knock it out of the sky because they're in a war scenario. They're just trying to get this thing out of the sky. But the main issue is like Kevin saw the disparity in the ability of the military to respond to this threat. And he's like, if the military has no real ability to respond to this,
how can airports?
This, exactly, how can an airport? How can a stadium? How can an energy production facility? And the answer is they can't. So that's what we initially started working on. We actually started working on a drone that was going to snatch other drones out of the sky.
So
Pac-Man.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we're called drones of prey. FAA overregulated. No one's allowed to do that right now. So we pulled back from the capture side of things to focus only on the detection and tracking side.
So this is what I've always wondered. What's the danger in flying near an airport? Because it limits you. You can't go near an airport and fly a drone. Can you damage a plane? Or is it strictly you can't take video over an airport?
So it's funny. I was on a plane one time getting ready to take off in Israel to come back to the U.S., and a bunch of birds flew into the engine, and we had to get off the plane and get on a new one because that plane couldn't fly anymore. And if like a bird did that, imagine the damage that like a structured metal and plastic drone could do to a plane. So if you want to the biggest example that we have of this being a problem was Gatwick Airport back in December in the UK. Second largest airport in the UK gets shut down for 33 hours because one guy and his drone and his friend decided to coordinate a bunch of flights over the airport. That's 82,000 people stranded, $64.5 million in costs to the airlines, $20 million in lost revenue to the airport. That's over $80 million in costs because of a piece of technology that costs less than $5,000.
Did they catch him?
No, they have no suspects. They arrested 2 guys, let him go because they weren't the 2 guys.
Nice.
And that's back in December, and nothing's happened since.
So back to the thing grabbing stuff from the sky.
Yeah.
So like the moment that the U.S. says like, all right, you guys can do it. Are you guys gonna have like, you're ready? Just gonna just sharpen the talon and go off or what?
Well, so yeah, I would love to be able to just say simply yes to that question. It's a little bit more in flux than that. We're a pretty early stage company right now, trying to get our first round of funding. So if we're able to still be existing 2 years from now, what I would love to do is raise another round and use that round to acquire a mitigation company and essentially bring that mitigation technology into our firm, upgrade that technology with our software, and essentially become like a true market leader where we're covering both sides of the market, detection and tracking, and the mitigation side.
So right now with the detection and tracking, who gets that information and what can they do with it?
So it would be any one of our clients. So let's do an example and talk about...
Let's do AT&T Center.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to do. Let's do AT&T Stadium. So we put our sensors around the stadium and probably a little bit further off the stadium, just because you want to detect them coming in as early as possible. You tell us, who's your security people? Who do you want to know about this when this is happening? And whenever we do a detection, they'll get an email and a text message with a link. So that way they can click the link and follow the flight as it's happening live. And then if they need to, at that point of time, if they determined that they want to do this, there will be a function on the dashboard that'll let them start coordinating with law enforcement then and there.
Cool.
But also what they get on that dashboard isn't just a live view of that flight. They get historic data. So you can see how many drone flyovers a month are you having? How long are those flyovers happening for? You can overlay the flights on top of each other and look for patterns in those flight paths and say, is there one type of flight or a couple of flights that are happening very regularly? And if they are, what are they probably doing? What are they flying near? Are they flying near a Wi-Fi access point to hack into our stuff? Are they looking for a structural weakness in part of our facility? And that lets you determine how to best respond to that. Because if you see threats that could potentially be growing in the future, you want to be able to respond to it as soon as possible.
Like migration patterns of drones, I get it.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, for more information about this company, it's obviously going to be booming here. Check them out. They're dronesofprey.biz. This is Michael Cohen. We're going to be right back with Bobby and JJ Radio.